everybody. I'm Kipp Snow. I'm the director of the Transportation Distribution Logistics Institute at the Community College of Baltimore County.
That's a mouthful, dude. That's a mouthful for a Saturday morning. Hi, I'm Mike Singer, Community Manager, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. So we're a local advocacy
We're both doing
group.
it this morning.
Yeah, just leave that in there. I don't care. And we do whatever we can to try to help promote everything to do with the Port of Baltimore and get a whole bunch of information out to help folks understand how things work here.
There's a whole bunch that's happened in the past week, Mike. Why don't we go ahead and get into the shipping update so we can get into all this stuff we're going to try to cover this week?
Yeah. So, and then we skipped a week.
Yep.
Because I went to the ocean and we had a celebration of life for my brother-in-law. So that was really cool to get the whole family together and tell some stories. You know, it's sad and poignant and wonderful. Anyway, he was a life of the party guy. You know,
sure,
hilarious. Oh my God, so funny. And just to see all that gone is just it's sad. Anyway,
it was good that you guys were able to come together and have a little bit of time.
Yeah,
to reflect
and extended family and friends, and we did it in Ocean City, so people had to come from like hours away and spend a weekend. So really shows, you know, the range. And the respect that he had from people. So let's get into our truck transactions, which is, you know, I think the official metric that Seagirt and Ports America uses to track container volume in the port. And so we skipped a week. So, well, I'm just going to read off the averages per week for the last 4 weeks. 2,600 a day 4 weeks ago. 3,200 a day 3 weeks ago. Then a slight dip, 3,100. That's the first. Is that the first dip that we've seen? I think that's the first. No. There was another little dip in there like 5 or 6 weeks ago. But, I mean, a steady progression. 24, 27, 26, 32, 31, 33. So 3,300 transactions on average this week. I mean, remember when we were in the thousands, right? And 1,500s, and then we got to like the teens, like 18. And I was saying that, you know, I know that normal is somewhere between 3 and 4, 35. Sometimes they'll hit 4,000 per day. You know, as a peak, but the average is kind of over 3. Well, I know it's over 3. And so for this week, I'll just read off the numbers from Monday through Friday. 33.45, 32.87, 32.73, 35.69. The first 3,500 truck transaction day in the recovery since the bridge went down. And 31.55 on Friday. So, you know, we're seeing a great progression, a really good trend. And I'm tampering that with a little skepticism because we know there might be a strike coming up. And how much is this? Jonathan Daniels, we went to the port meeting yesterday. We'll talk more about that later on. He said...
Go ahead.
And he said at one point, in preparation for a potential strike, they want to get as much of the cargo off as possible. So there is an effort to at least get the cargo off. I imagine that there's also an effort to get the cargo in.
Right.
And I don't know that for a fact. Someone hasn't told me that, but that seems to make common sense to me.
Sure. Daniel specifically said something. He actually mentioned the truck transactions in the meeting yesterday.
He said gate transactions, but yeah, I think he means the same thing.
Yes. But he did say that, that same kind of progression, that slow return, that that I believe the month of August was.
Oh, he did say that, didn't
He said that
he?
the month of August this year was actually higher than the month of August the previous year before the bridge.
You know
You
what?
gonna pull up your notes on that one?
I'm gonna pull up my darn notes. Did
So I
you
mean,
you were sitting right next to me in a meeting? Did you notice I was taking notes?
I noticed that you were taking notes. I appreciate
Okay.
that. Yeah, but what I'm getting at is that they look
Yes.
at these. They're following these same kinds of metrics also. Now
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned that okay, there was a couple of dips here or there, but now we're starting. With that bridge kind of focal point for collecting metrics or analyzing the metrics.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have some dips. What you want to do now that we've had a significant number of weeks since the bridge incident, you
Mm-hmm.
can look at further trends and see that on average, good, positive trend return back. What that metric was the ship transactions. And he did state that the volume on the ships is not there, but the ship numbers coming back were.
Right.
You got your
So
notes?
July 2024
That's what it is.
was stronger than July 2023, which is like, wow,
Right.
wow. Um, but he did say the amount of cargo still lacks.
Yeah.
They're at like a 60 to 70% rebound. So a 30% lag, not a 60 to 70%. So they're only about 30% behind.
So the steamship lines are coming back into the original routes, and they're actually trying to build upon those routes also and have more stops here in the port now that we're back operating. They're making a big push for that.
Right.
So the routes are back there. That's evident in the Seagirt, the Ports America Chesapeake calendars that you've been pulling up.
Mm-hmm.
But not all of the shippers have aligned their supply chains with those routes yet. So again, it's multiple facets that are involved in making these decisions to move back into the Port of Baltimore.
Right. And then, yeah, we'll talk about the meeting
Sure,
later.
yeah.
So I have some big breaking news
So
from the port.
we really do need to get the glass sound effect or something here
What are you talking about?
for
What class?
breaking news. The
Breaking news. Okay. Now I'm with you. More coffee. Okay. See, I got you yesterday. You weren't. We
I
were
was not
sitting
there.
next to each other, and I'm being a jokester, and you just weren't getting it. And you were like, "I need my coffee." All right, one for Kip. So really, some breaking news this morning from one of my port sources. So a little backstory. So the Maersk Saltoro came in today, and why is that significant? Because she's a Dali sister ship. Now, I had been recently thinking, I wonder because it's not like it's the FAA, right? And I don't. We talked about this before. I don't know what the overall governing uh, for ships in the world is, and how that works, and how they can apply, and who makes decisions, and how, right? So, is there any effort to go on all these sister ships because supposedly they're all wired the same? We had heard that.
Yes.
They're all wired the same. They're all set up the same with the same switches and remember we talked about like the two different sides and of when you're talking about the four generators and which anyway. So anyway, the Mayor Saltoro came in this morning. We have it on camera, like in the dark, coming in early this morning. And supposedly she was just shut down by FBI, DEA, Homeland, and Customs Border Patrol and Coast Guard.
Wow.
All came in, boarded the ship, and shut it down. I don't know. That's all I know. But my source even said that's all they knew. They just wanted to give me a heads up. So there is some serious, and I mean,
So you
not
hear
we're not using breaking news like they use it on the TV. It's
on the
just
sure,
it's just a thing they say. This is really breaking news from I,
just a
an
couple of
hour
minutes ago.
right here at our little Seagirt Baltimore Marine Terminal. So that's some interesting stuff. It maybe
I will be curious to see what happens, and if there's anything done out of it, and if we find out if there was anything.
I did contact one of our port source friends. You can probably figure out who I'm talking about. I won't mention their name, but I did give them a text this morning and give them a heads up.
Okay.
So maybe we'll hear something from him.
Speaking of the Dali,
Yeah. So there was all this talk about she's leaving. She's going to leave. We think she's leaving on the 17th. And guess what? It wound up leaving on the 17th. And, they played with the time, and it was supposed to be 6 a.m., and then it was supposed to be 12, and then it was supposed to be 1:30, so normal, right? Like how it happened here. Every time there was a, anticipation of an event like that, it always seemed to slip. Um, and so the Dali left Norfolk under escort. I think 3 tugboats, Coast Guard boat, like local law enforcement.
and they didn't have any bridges to really worry too much about.
Well, there are bridges if you go out of the channel, kind of like here.
True.
But yeah, everything's a tunnel down there, right? So where the where the ship channels are, everything's a tunnel. So yes. So let me see. Let's see. Let's see if we can share some pictures about that, huh? Where? Oh, okay. This should be it. So let's see if I can. Let's just make this one bigger. So there she is, just out of the terminal, I think, headed north towards that first tunnel. You can see how empty it is.
It looked like the back end of her is sunk a little bit.
Right, and don't they do that on purpose to get the prop in,
Prop in the water, right?
the prop in the keel?
Yeah.
I think. So still here we are, still learning about ships, how they work. But we are interested, and we definitely have some folks who are interested also. So this is from the camera Thimble Shoal Shipwatching. So this guy has a camera set up at his house,
Yep.
and it is quite the distance away, but he is able to get some activity on the camera. So pretty cool.
Now, from our trip on the Brown, and knowing where that camera is at and where this picture was taken, that's an impressive lens on that one, even if it's a canned lens.
Right, right. And
Pick
I
that up.
haven't. I do talk to this fellow, and so it would be curious to see what the
What
capabilities
kind
of
of
that
setup he's
camera
got?
are,
Yeah.
because he did this all himself. He told me what computer it's running on, what software it's running, and then you have to have some extra stuff to run these banners.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Anyway,
Oh,
yeah. So I think. Oh, is it one more? Can we actually do this?
I don't know. Try it and see what happens. Hey, look at that.
So we're sharing a helicopter video on the podcast. Now watch when they zoom in. Watch on the bow. You get some really incredible detail here.
You don't ever get a chance to see a ship fully empty
Empty.
like this. I mean
And so
that
look at
that'll
that. So look at those hatches, right? So people forget that
you
your
can lift.
containers are sitting on top. Oh, look at this.
Wow. That is
So we
great.
all were in some kind of we all thought there was, and so see that white barrier, this wall here. Can you? Oh, so I pointed at it and stopped moving. Okay, there it goes. It's just lagging. It's just a video lagging.
That's all right. I think it's cool you're able to cut a video on this like this.
Yeah, I don't know why it's lagging, but anyway. So we were under. So let's see if it comes back. We were under some impression. A lot of us speculating. We were thinking, oh look, there's folks up on the bow. Check that out. We were under some kind of impression that we thought they would kind of just put some massive plates of steel over this so that when they're transitioning the ocean for like a month to the other side of the world, that, if they get heavy seas, their water wouldn't be able to get in. And you can see that, I guess that didn't now look, that looks like fresh steel up there.
Yeah. They may have done some work for some very specific things, but maybe the rest of the problems were not a direct issue to make it seaworthy. I mean, I cannot imagine that the Coast Guard would have released it if they hadn't given some kind of final blessing.
Right. And then maybe there's also, I don't know, a minimum blessing, right? Because we're going to escort you, and you understand that you're going to the other side of the world. We're not going to have to deal with you.
Once you get out of our jurisdiction, we don't care what happens to you. See ya.
I mean, if they were going to another American port, it would be different, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would. You know what? I would agree with you that they'd probably escort this particular vessel all the way straight through.
Right. Yeah, I just think things would be.
This is the equivalent of back in the day when the cops would escort you to the county line and say, "There you go."
Out of some video or something. All right, yeah. Go do whatever you want now. You're out of our jurisdiction. We don't care. Yeah, wild.
Wow.
All right. Oh, that's cool.
You can see the tug lines.
Yeah, they've got the stern line on. Yeah.
Except for the helicopter.
Bar
in the way.
Getting in my way.
That's really cool.
Yeah. All right, let's. So she left, and finally, and we know that there was some. The Department of Justice went down and did some inspections. We really never
heard much from that part of it.
Yeah, but then there was talk of a suit after that, so maybe the inspections were part of it. I don't know that we ever got that whole continuing story and how it.
That last inspection, and then some of the reports that came out earlier in the week, was that there was an electrical cable that had some corrosion on it in that panel, and when the vent function was moved back and forth, which caused the electrical problem while it was tied up at berth. Nobody knew that electrical, or we're assuming that nobody knew that electrical cable was loose or had come loose or had corroded. This was something that was done after the fact during an inspection. So we know now that there was that there definitely was an electrical problem. It's not any of these other conspiracy theories that everybody was, it's this political party or this celebrity who's doing whatever. It legitimately was an electrical problem. I think that they're going to do some more kind of investigatory work on, how do you inspect something of this magnitude? How do you make sure that, these types of problems are prevented?
Mm-hmm.
Why was there corrosion? Is kind of one of the things that I was just generally curious about was
right.
How did this electrical cable become corroded, which caused all of the problems? I think there's still
why weren't there periodic inspections, or why wasn't it reported, or how was it missed? Right, a lot of the lessons learned here, in safety, right, like flight safety, like for passenger airplanes, sometimes it's referred to as, or with automobile transport, and how you don't get a light at an intersection until there's been enough accidents.
Sure.
Right? Rules are written in blood, for lack of a better term. I mean, that sounds horribly graphic. But it's kind of the truth.
Sure.
So maybe there's a whole lot of lessons that can be learned and hopefully applied, at least to these other 7 or 8 sister ships.
And that may be one of the reasons why they maybe they just need to go in and do some inspections today. Maybe there was a connection made. This is a sister ship. Let's go. Let's do some due diligence and let's just take a look and see if there's any potential problem.
Right. And to my knowledge, this ship has been here several times.
Sure.
And well, we've had 2 or 3 of her sister ships here in town. Mm-hmm. Now, it's possible that this happened before and I didn't hear about it, but as far as I know, this hasn't happened when the sister ships were in town previously. Yeah.
Related to the bridge, there was a number of different pressers that came out this week about legal claims, litigation. Some of the victims' families are filing suit.
Yeah.
The company who was employing the workers on the bridge have filed a suit. I
hadn't heard that. So
yeah,
one of the there.
Yeah,
Scoop Snow.
What's that?
Scoop Snow.
There was all.
It's like a pun.
You never know, you know. And the one of the survivors. So it was one of the company managers who was on the bridge who did survive. He is also filing suit. So there's quite a there. You know, in that litigation claim period, you're starting to see some of those parties do specific.
And there is limitation on that, right? Do you know what that is off the top of your head?
I don't know. I don't know that they've figured it all out yet, because I think that one of the shipping line parties was looking to file a suit to limit that if they haven't already done that. Mm-hmm. But you've also got insurance, lots of insurance companies involved, lots of different players because of the contracted service that was involved with the ship.
We haven't even talked about cargo yet. All those companies
haven't even addressed the cargo.
Yeah. But I wanted to read some of this. This is
sure.
What you had just started off talking about, and I wanted to, I just summarize real quick. Key bridge collapse victims' families intend to file legal claim to hold ship company responsible. The 3 families plan to hold the ship accountable for the deaths of their loved ones. Here's a quote: "No financial loss can compare to the loss of human life. No legal loophole should ever be able to erase the value of a human life." So we know what they're talking about there. They're talking about, it's a roundabout way of talking about now it just went out of my head. What's the cargo, the general average? I'm sure that's what they're referring to there.
Correct.
And this is just another quote from the lawyer. The ship had lost power multiple times before leaving the port, and in our view, that should have led to the ship to assess what had gone wrong and fix the problem before it left the port, and it didn't do that, attorney Matthew Wessler said. So I would agree with that. And we had talked about that, right? Is this, when this happened, whose procedures, or were there procedures? Were there company procedures that should have been followed, or weren't there company procedures? And they're like, oh, this happened, no big deal. I don't have anything telling me that this can't happen, so let's just. And they didn't report it, right?
It may not be solely the company related issue. It could not, whether or not it followed, Coast Guard or any other maritime related law or navigational process or anything like that.
Yeah, and then so as we're perusing the internet, and I'm constantly scouring for the content, I see things and I'm like, oh, let's talk about that in the podcast. And so sometimes you'll just see a little conversation will pop up, and it's like, oh, that's an interesting point. So people who don't follow this like we do, right? And sometimes I forget about that. Like, for an example, there have been articles about the new bridge And it's amazing how much people don't know. And I guess I forget that I'm so hyper focused on this because of our interest in shipping here, that there's a whole lot of people that are living their lives, and they aren't focusing on this like
Sure,
we are,
sure,
right? And there's a whole bunch of things that people aren't paying attention to. That's just one example. But when it comes up, you'll see people like, well, why don't they hold the ship ransom, and pound it, and make them pay us? And that seems reasonable. I mean, that happens
sure.
in other instances. But now this is just one commenter said, hey, it wouldn't be worth it. Then they'd have to maintain it, and the value is very low. The Dali, the cargo ship that collided with the bridge, was valued at about $90 million before the crash. So, however, the ship's value is now estimated to be reduced to $42 million after the crash due to repair and salvage costs. So, and then, of course, you would have to find some place to keep
Park
it.
it.
And so, how much per month is that berth rent that you're paying, which is basically paying down the value of the ship? And now you're trying to get less, more coffee. I don't feel like 42 million is what percentage of 2 billion?
Sure.
Even that first insurance claim for 300 million was a lot more than 42.
Right. True.
Right. So
when you put it into those kinds of perspectives, there are people who are looking at those numbers and going, what is the we've got to
why
make
would
some
we?
decisions. So why don't we put it? We have to put some type of value to this in order to make a decision to progress forward.
Yeah. And then there was an article that said, and I guess we already covered this, that the ship owner cut corners on repairs. And I meant to kind of drill down on that for today, but I didn't get around to it. Like what? Like why do they say that, and what is their
think
basis?
that?
Hmm?
Why do they think that? Yeah, we can't. I think that this is going to this part of the storyline is going to continue on just
For how
because of
many
the
years?
litigation.
For how many years this is going to continue?
Yeah.
There's all these people filing lawsuits because there's that limited reaction time, right? And I know we had talked about that before. There's a finite amount of time. I don't remember what it was though. But so that's happening, and they know they have to do it soon to get under the wire, as it were. But those lawsuits aren't going to be litigated and finished anytime soon, right? I mean,
Right. I think this week we could take a look at what this article is talking about and what some of the issues were with repairs and maybe look at what types of repairs were approved for it to go for the ship to go out to sea. We can look into that.
Yeah. So you were at a meeting earlier this week, or you
Yeah,
had some stuff going on college?
So the Department of Natural Resources had a meeting on the Community College of Baltimore County's Dundalk campus this week to take information, feedback about public concerns around the rest of the bridge demolition. Now, this was the people that I spoke to. They said that they're moving forward with the bridge demolition. They are very aware of what the potential issues are, and the gentleman that I spoke to said that sound pollution. So as the bridge components are taken down and they hit the water, or the equipment around it is being utilized, it creates sound and sound waves that can be heard underwater. And so there is some concern about wildlife within this
Oh,
area that may be impacted based on that, or scrap materials or what have you that fall into the water and get cleaned up. And those were the major issues. Some of the communities, right close to the bridge property, had
Mm-hmm.
some concerns about some emissions and some environment, some air quality related concerns. But for the most part, it was just we want to make sure that there's not something else that that the public is concerned about that we
Right,
can
because
basically we can address while we're taking the bridge down and try to and not do those things. So
mm-hmm.
they had some really cool graphics that explained what exactly what the steps were that were going to be taken to move remove the bridge structures.
Hey, so remember we had talked about this, and it's been in the back of my head, been in the back of my mind, and I keep thinking about bringing it up. And just if I can interrupt for just a
Yeah,
moment,
sure, good.
remember when I found all those diagrams there's a detailed plan for taking down all that structure, all of it, with like engineering drawings and written out instructions. And we're gonna have to we might have to dedicate a podcast to that
Sure, sure.
when they get closer. Now of course I'm gonna have to actually go find it.
So, well, basically, what you're telling me is they're not just going to roll a barge up with a wrecking ball and just go swinging and have at it. There's
Right.
a structured process that is going to be followed in order to take this thing down. And it's not just a afterthought or what have you.
Right. And I don't know why I guess my brain works in that if I don't hear about it, it doesn't exist. So when I found that stuff, and I forget what I was looking for, I wasn't looking for that specifically, and I found it, and I was like, oh wow, look at this. I was kind of surprised. Wow, here's this like finite, well thought out plan for removing every piece of that structure with diagrams and everything, and
Hmm.
and obviously it makes sense that there would be a plan and they would have it all worked out. But
Hmm.
I was still surprised to see it when I found it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I think folks will be really interested in that when we get
Yeah.
closer to demo. So so we got some John Brown news. They're doing some
Yeah.
cool stuff over there.
They're doing a fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the
It sounds like so much fun. Like I forget it's a fundraiser.
yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like even when they have those great cruises, when they have those
Mhm.
cruises in the bay, I mean, that's a fundraiser. They've.
Absolutely.
I'm
This
sorry. Go ahead.
this particular fundraiser, they are dressing the ship up for Halloween. They are turning the ship into a ghost ship, and you
Okay,
have
so they're not putting like giant googly eyes on the bow or anything.
no,
Oh,
not
okay.
like that. No, and in fact, they had a promo video where they kind of showed some of the decorations they put up, and they had some skeletons in some of the bunks, and it's pretty spooky looking. So they turned the ship into a haunted house or a haunted ship, not
Nice.
really a haunted house, but and so the weekends in October and the first weekend in November, they are going to allow visitors to come on and tour the ship and go through their haunted ship. So there are all of the weekends in October, depending on which weekend it is there's some different pricing structures. So go early because it's
Mm.
you know I get that it benefits the Brown, but if you want to do it, you're watching the money a little bit. Go the first weekend in October, but all through October they're going to have this ghost ship opportunity out on Pier 13. Be able to tour the ship and all see all the decorations. Um, it says that it's open for people, the children 12 and over. So that
Mm-hmm.
don't there are some spooky decorations in there that the younger kids may be a little scared about. But you can bring the kids 12 and over with supervision. Make sure you wear closed toe flat shoes. This is a
Mm.
industrial environment.
Yes.
So remember that. Don't wear heels or flip flops. Don't get all dressed up for this thing. Uh, and you also have to be able to walk a 40-foot gangway up to the deck
Right.
from the pier. So if anybody's interested, well, go you can go purchase tickets at their website ssjohnwbrown.org. We'll put the website up. Right on the left hand side is a little button that says tickets. You click on that and you can pick which weekend date that you want to buy tickets for.
Cool. So, like the closer it gets, or maybe it's more expensive on weekends, or
Yeah, so the first 2 weekends in October it's $25 a person.
mm-hmm.
The third weekend it's $30 a person, and then that last weekend, right there around the Halloween time, it's $35 a person.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Good old supply and demand, huh?
yeah. And so all that money will go towards the John W. Brown's operations and cover a lot of their costs that they incur on a monthly basis right there at Pier 13. But
Right.
they've also got some catch up from the work that they had done at Dry Dock. So
Yeah. So let's talk about that for just a second, right?
Mhm.
So they
Sure.
went down there. So and Coast Guard people, Mike at BaltimoreShipwatchers.com. When I screw this up or I don't get the details right, just let me have it. I mean,
Email Mike. Yeah.
I want to get this stuff right. So because they are taking tickets and having passengers on, the Coast Guard says that they have to go to dry dock every 5 years, something like that. I
Mhm.
surmise.
Get their usual inspections. Correct.
Right. And while they were down there, they found a problem. There's like an electrolysis problem. And
What what it that
like
means
there's pitting in the steel. Like there's some kind of stray current.
that's shocking the ship that's causing extra.
Yeah, because electricity will find the easiest path, kind of like water. Well, electricity through water, and then it wants to go to.
The
I'm
point of
not even
least
going to try to
resistance.
explain it. I'm not even going to try to explain it. But so they were talking about that they were going to have to hire some professionals
Mhm.
to come, and based on where the John Brown had been previously, they think they've narrowed it down to a problem at Pier 13 because the last time they went to dry dock, they didn't have this problem.
Mhm.
And so the next thing that, as we think about fundraising, because they have this problem, now they're required to go back in 3 years,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
not 5.
Oh, wow.
Right. So now, let's say you're taking your whatever your standard and what do you remember what the initial cost was? I know we talked about it. I just don't remember. But they ran into what an extra
It's like an extra 500,000. I thought.
right. That yes, that thought sticks in my head also. But so whatever your expected basis for your whatever you're budgeting for your once every 5 years. Okay, so
It's,
now you've
now
got
it's
to
almost
find
doubled
forty
because
percent more money in in a 3 year period because you don't have 2 years to do that fundraising, and it might be even more expensive because now you've got this reoccurring problem. So
right.
so maybe you're not a Halloween person. Buy a ticket, go
Buy a
check it out.
ticket to help support them. Correct. Yeah.
They really do, and
Um, if you don't want to have the discussions that the SS United States is having,
mm,
where they're dealing with so everybody wants to keep the ship because of the name and the history, but there's an extreme cost associated with it, and there are those who are considering turning it into reefs, and
right,
it's those same kinds of discussions that will need to
yeah,
be had.
and that is amazing, isn't it? I mean, you have this group, and they're passionate about that ship. Let's just use that as an example for right now. So you have this group and they're passionate about that ship, and the costs just to keep it tied up at an active port are so
Right.
much that they couldn't raise enough money to do anything else. So it just sat there for years,
Yeah.
which is, so they were able to keep it, and that was great, but they weren't able to move it forward. So that's kind of sad. So we don't
Sure.
want to see that happen here with the Brown. Such an important part
Hmm.
of our history, and as allies, and what we went through to help our allies to build. And this is just one small bullet point.
Yeah.
That we built 2,500 of these ships to supply the Allies with troops and supplies, and now there's what, 5 ships left. Only 2 of them have the original steam expansion engine and are running. This one was built here in Baltimore. So incredible history that we don't want to see anything happen to. So um, if you like the color orange, or if you like pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns, just buy a ticket. Maybe you don't have to go. Do whatever you can to support the John Brown, because
Absolutely.
she needs our help.
Absolutely.
And then there was some kind of background local Port of Baltimore news, like,
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of things that are happening.
mm-hmm.
I got a bunch of bullet points here to kind of push through. Um, things that have happened over the past couple of weeks that I wanted to make sure that we mention.
Now, can you actually take a bullet point and put it on your computer and actually push it through the wire? How small does it have to be? The actual push the bullet. All right.
I thought you were going to tell me, can you put it up on the screen like the little
Yeah. Can
video?
you put, can you
Yeah.
share your screen and show us the bullet point?
No, I can't right
No.
this second, but I'll prepare my. You know what? If I've got bullet points next time, I can't be shown up by you putting a fancy video on the recording. Now I got to go get
Yeah.
the
Now you're
bullet
gonna have to
points.
step up your game. I knew about that video, but I just I'm
Oh
always
no,
pulling
that's
stuff
great.
out.
No, you know what? I'm gonna make my bullet point screen next time, and we'll hit it as we
Oh,
talk about it. Be all
this
fancy.
isn't
How
going to
about
be
that?
good. Okay.
Um, Governor Moore appointed 2 port commissioners earlier this month.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might ask what a port commissioner does.
I would.
The role of, I knew you were going to ask. That's why I had the definition ready to go.
Good man.
Um,
Good man.
the role of the port commissioner is to establish policies to improve the competitive position of the port. So this
Mm-hmm.
is like your board of directors or an advisory group that comes in and says, that isn't involved in the day-to-day transactions, the
Right.
operational transactions, but is providing that guidance and leadership that the port community needs.
And a lot of
Um,
times when you're talking about board of directors, right, these are people who are active in the area or active in the industry. They're probably already wearing 2 or 3 hats. We're
yes,
just they're just agreeing to put like another hat on and kind of have this
correct.
part-time advisory function, for lack of a better term. Is that
That that
accurate?
that's a good way to describe it. The the
Mm-hmm.
the, the two new commissioners are John Brewer and Adam Newman. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're not familiar with who they are, John Brewer is the director of the Office of Insular Affairs, the U.S. Department of Interior,
Mm.
and Adam Newman is the chief of staff to the president of the Baltimore Ravens. So
Okay.
these are people who, just like what you said, wear other hats. Those hats are probably their first hats, and this is a second hat or third hat that they're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're doing is they're taking their leadership skills and their connectivity to their role within their industry components, and
Mm-hmm.
they are listening to the direction that the port needs to go in and providing from their perspective, their knowledge base, their experience, their expertise. Here's how we need to go and move forward with the Port of Baltimore.
Okay.
Now, you may say, well, wait a second. What does the Department of Interior and the Baltimore Ravens have to do with the port? There may be some indirect or direct involvement. Um,
And or that person may have had a bunch of port or industry experience before they took this job with the Ravens, right? So,
or it could be that they have extensive knowledge in policy making and interaction with state,
mm,
local, and federal governments. So there's a lot of reasons why you would have different kinds of partners to serve on the on the port commissioners board.
now it um,
And we actually heard from this gentleman yesterday at the BPA meeting.
mm-hmm,
But the port also named a new business development manager
mm-hmm,
for that works for the Maryland Port Administration. His name is Matthew Wypieski, and
mm-hmm,
he comes to us from quite a number of other port. Other ports here on the East Coast.
mm-hmm.
He mentioned that he'd also worked with Jonathan Daniels in I forget
It was somewhere in the Gulf.
in the Gulf, I believe, during
I
because
don't
they were talking
remember.
about the response that they were involved with the hurricane
Mm-hmm. And
during that
getting
time
that
period.
port back up.
Yeah,
Now they're going to take away our podcaster badge because we don't remember what the name of the city
I
was.
know. I need to take
Ugh,
notes also.
ugh,
But he's
those slackers. Okay.
so his title is Deputy Executive Director for Commercial Development. So his role is to go and bring new business to the port. Now, why is
Mm-hmm.
this important? I mean, yes, we want more business at the port,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. But with him going out and getting more companies to ship through the port,
Mm-hmm.
we've got his role is also going to work to try to bring more carriers to the port,
Mm-hmm.
more steamship lines, more interconnectivity. His role is to manage that process of all of the businesses in and out of the port to come through the port.
Mm-hmm.
So that means more labor, more jobs, more boosts to the local economy.
Right.
There's a lot of benefits in having this person in there and trying to drum up the business for the port.
Right. And from what Jonathan said, I thought he was trying to say that like this guy is going to be a new overseer because remember there was I think a lady that they hired for Roro. She was like business development.
Oh, that's yeah.
Right, remember? And I was like, look, I find it fascinating. And this is just another layer to the cake, right? Where, okay, we're this successful port. We've cracked the top 10, even though we're just little old Baltimore. We've got small city syndrome sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, and we're number one in imports in Roro for 12 years running. And yet, they go out and find somebody to build on that success.
Yes.
And
It's not just hey, don't
let's just
assume that
chill.
the
We like
business
what we
is
got.
yeah. Don't assume that the business is just going to come. It's going to take some effort to attract that business.
And then, when we had talked about right after the bridge went down and how these other Roro terminals, had like capacity ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? And we did those comparative numbers, and I forget what the metric was, but was it auto imports, auto and light truck imports? Like they were only like 100,000 per year below us.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other ports that are creeping up,
Yeah,
and they would love to knock off the king. And really, that's what we are. We're the number one auto importer in the U.S. 12 years running, and you betcha somebody's gunning for that. It's
right.
like
Yeah,
football.
we talked a little bit about that with the Port of Savannah and
Yeah.
the Jasper County terminal that's down there.
So I always find it interesting that Now, of course, it makes sense, but to me, I'm quite fascinated by, we have all these successes, and then we're going to make sure that, we're looking in other areas and try to constantly improve.
Yep. Um, there's a couple of date specific things, but
Mm-hmm.
can we let you want to chat about the BPA meeting yesterday first before I get
Sure.
into the
Sure.
so Mike and I attended the BPA meeting, the Baltimore Port Alliance. That is the support group for all of the public and private terminals here in the port.
Mm-hmm.
We meet on a bi-monthly or every 2 month. Is that bi-monthly basis?
Yes.
And there's usually some
Yes.
presentations about what's happening. There was a update on the Colgate Bridge, um,
Yes.
and
Which is the little bridge. If folks don't know, there's a little bridge. So there's Dundalk Marine Terminal is here, and Seagirt Marine Terminal is here. This is where all the rows go, all the cars and stuff. Seagirt is where all the containers go, and there's a little river, a little creek that goes in between those. And they even fit ships in there up to a certain point, and they keep the pilot boat there right by the bridge. But to get there's a long road along the back of the port, and there's a bridge over a creek, and because of the heavy truck traffic nature of a port, and that bridge has needed help for a really long time, and they've been rebuilding it for what seems like a really long time. And so when we
there
go
is
to these meetings, we
yeah.
always get a Colgate Creek Bridge update.
The big joke is, or the reason why there's a joke is, we can't just go and take the bridge out and immediately replace it, because that is the main artery for trucks going in and out of both of those terminals.
Right.
They would have to basically push everything out into the Dundalk neighborhoods. So they're
Oof.
building this bridge in pieces or in phases so that it can
Like
still be
half and half.
utilized. Yeah.
Like closed half of it down, and you're riding on what I thought was the old half.
Right. And
So
what and you're basically creating a long term bottleneck just in order to go create, but rebuild this bridge.
right, you know what? And I just thought of this, but I think all those happen on land. Where they've come up with that new way of where they'll come in and they'll demo the bridge overnight. And
Oh
meanwhile,
yes,
they've
yes.
got the new section prefabbed, and they bring the thing in
You just drop
and
it in.
drop it in place, and it's done in like a weekend. It's like amazing. All right, instead of shutting down this whole intersection for like a year,
Mm-hmm.
or shutting half of it down for 2 years, right? That's always the debate. But I don't know if those things happen over water.
I would imagine with all the
And
footings
then
and
where
everything.
would you put the darn thing?
Right. Yeah.
There? I mean, there's not a whole lot of staging area to do something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought about that. That would be an interesting. Grab that gentleman off to the side at one of these meetings and say, "Hey, do you guys ever think about?" Just
I'll
curious.
so the BPA meeting did have a number of report outs from the environmental committee.
Mm-hmm.
There was Rupert Denny talked a little bit about the partnership with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and trying to put some oyster beds around the port, which was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
But and then there was some discussions about the impeding strike with the ILA. So we'll get into that here in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
But there were also some other dates that I think that should be mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
This past week was National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. So out in social media, we saw a lot of focus on the connectivity with truck drivers within the port.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this week we also had Talk Like a Pirate Day. So I hope that everybody got their eye patches and said their pirate be like a pirate jokes and those types of things.
Right, right.
Coming up next week is Agency Day, Agency Day, September the 24th, out at the cruise terminal. So this is an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for the port community to come out and engage with all of the federal agencies that work in and around the port,
Mm-hmm.
and talk about what type of connectivity or synergy may exist with that. So if you're in the port community and want to go talk with um, the federal agency representatives and listen to their presentations, consider looking at attending that day. All right, so there is this talk about a potential strike coming up October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, let me just, as we were talking about them, I just took a couple of notes. It's not a lot of stuff here, but Jonathan Daniels. We were getting into some specifics, right, about that. Not everything in the port will be affected. Some things are, some things aren't, based on agreements, contracts. I don't know what the specifics are, but the cruise terminal will not be affected.
correct.
Military cargo will not be affected. And so when I think about military cargo, I think about hardware. I'm
This is
thinking about tanks and, maybe armored vehicles or helicopters, right? But I didn't realize that those American flagged ARC Ro-Ros that come to town.
mhm.
Shout out, the schedule is on the website. Their schedule for visiting Baltimore is on the website under shipping links, right where the container ship schedule is that we've been looking at forever. That they also move families and their housewares and their cars. Like if they're moving to a base in Germany or the UK or coming back. And so there's a, I didn't realize that for the longest
Yeah.
time. So that's also a part of military cargo.
Mm-hmm. So that will
And
not be affected either by the strike.
right. And then I took this out of context and I wanted to talk to you about this. Uh, he said something along the lines of, and so please correct me if I totally got I'm off base on it. Strike dealing primarily with container ops. Did you hear
Yeah.
that,
So
or am I?
so there are different and what Jonathan was I think trying to explain is that there's not one all-encompassing labor contract for everybody. That there are different contracts that exist for locations or the types of products or commodities.
Mhm.
If you think about it, the training that's necessary for container operations is quite different than RoRo operations, and so you're going
Right,
to
because
have
those
different
railroad
labor.
guys have to be able to basically drive every piece of equipment, no matter what it is, right, off of that ship.
Which is a very different skill set than rigging around container movements from crane on a crane
Right,
from ship to shore.
right.
So there you
A
have to
bit more
have different.
variety.
Correct. So this particular contract negotiation is primarily focused on the container operations and those related contracts.
See, I did find that interesting because I'm not sure that I knew that or realized that it was mostly so. In other words, what we're saying is Seagert is
You're going to see a
not going to
lot.
be running,
Yes,
and it won't affect everything else at the port as much. Does that
correct.
sound accurate?
Correct. So
Okay.
it's not a complete shutdown of
The
shipping,
entire.
importing, and exporting. It's going to be on major components or major divisions of the overall industry.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It's still going to impact us, and I think that
Oh,
so one of the things that Jonathan Daniels was talking about was they are preparing for this, and they under you know And he even said he supports the labor. They are creating the spaces and are working with the ILA to create those spaces so that if the strike happens, that they have the ability to, and in his words, follow their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But they also, the port
Picketing
also has a
specifically.
has a business to still operate with this, and so they're
Yes.
trying to push as much container and freight in and out before that deadline, because there are certain things that will have to take place if a strike happens.
Right.
Um,
And he did. And I found this really interesting that, we're down into the details, but we're talking about, people's livelihood. And he was saying that there is some folks that are still going to have to come on to Seagirt property and do, and I'm good, this is my term, a skeleton job. Whatever it takes to keep the thing barely running. I,
what he was mentioning, and what,
okay,
what he was what
thank
he
you.
was referring to, I think, was the MPA, or the Maryland Port Administration employees who do work on the terminal, who are not part of the labor or the union, and so
I see.
they're still going to have to report to work. They're not going to be involved in the strike. You have to be able to provide that opportunity for those people to come into work, but also the other people to still be able to go do their, do the work related to the union and the strike.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
did we cover?
it'll
Oh,
it'll
there's
be
some more.
interesting to watch over this next week what actually happens. I am watching what USMX is discussing, and what the ILA is discussing back and forth, and what their positions are, just so I can understand, what what their roles are within the strike, and so we'll keep an eye on that.
So could I interrupt for just a moment?
Yeah.
So I wanted to say, since we're talking about Seagirt and containers, check that out, right? So that is a photograph that a friend of mine gave me. He took the photograph. This is of one of the Ever M class
Mm,
ships. What are they? 15,432 TEUs.
wow.
So, like 1,000 TEUs more in the same length and width of the largest ship to come to Baltimore, but they managed to cram an extra, well, let's say 500 full size containers into that same space. So this is one example of the new largest family of ships to come to Baltimore,
Nice.
and shout out David Seitz. Everybody loves his photography, and he gifted that to me. So it's a pretty
Nice.
cool, pretty great shot there. Yeah.
Good.
So while we're talking about containers, it
Good.
just happens to be the largest container ship ever to come to Baltimore, right over my shoulder.
There you go.
Yeah.
Um, the You want to talk a little bit about some quick history notes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Maybe hit that quickly because we're up over an
We're,
hour here.
yeah, we've gone over our typical normal time with all of this stuff that's going on. Just some two quick things that I
Sure.
came across for this past week or so. Uh, the War of 1812 had a lot of movements in August and September of 1812, which I'm seeing a lot of kind of history nuggets related to that. But here with the War of 1812 in the port, the this particular week, it was around September 14th ish.
Mm-hmm.
In 1814, the U.S. Navy erected fortifications on the west of Fort McHenry to guard against the British landings. One of these batteries was called Fort Covington.
Yeah.
Covington. Okay, so that's under naval command. The Sea Fencibles defended these batteries, and the Sea Fencibles were drawn from Maryland regiments naval forces and army regiments. And on September the 14th of 1814, the Sea Fencibles repelled attempted British landings. And the
Now, isn't
fire
that
from
interesting? Because to get Fort Covington, Port Covington, I guess the port got its name from the fort. You got to go past Fort McHenry.
hmm Yeah, this was fortifications on the left hand side of.
I know. I'm just finding it interesting that they were able to get past Fort McHenry.
Oh yeah,
That's what I'm
gotcha. Yes.
indicating there.
It says the last little kind of descriptive situation I found was that the fire from the battery's guns shook houses all throughout the city. So this was a major
Wow.
operation. So
You know
one
what
of
I
the
would like to see? Maybe we can put this on a post-it for the research department. Um, uh, I wonder how much, how many pictures or
mm,
maps or diagrams there are, and it'd be great to do an overlay of, where the fort is and then where the port is, right?
that would be good. Yeah,
Because most people don't know about that fort. I mean, there's people who are passionate about the renaming of Port Covington, right?
mm,
And Port Covington, in its own right, was its own port
correct.
within the Port of Baltimore, if you will, because we had three different railroads serving this town,
hmm
importing and exporting, doing a lot of exporting of grain and coal, right? And so that's where the Western Maryland Railroad did all of their exporting, right there, southwest but so between Fort McHenry and the Hanover Street Bridge,
Bridge.
that
Yep.
was basically all their territory. And so a lot of people are passionate about the veritable renaming of Port Covington to Baltimore Peninsula, which I'll go on a record that's the most horrible name ever. I don't like it. But then there's a lot of people who don't know that there was a Fort Covington there beforehand.
Sure.
So it would be cool to do a little something on that. Episode
That that
47.
overlay I that overlay idea is pretty neat to show current map and then where does this stuff exist.
That would be
Sure.
cool.
Okay. So we had that. Also in 2021 in September is when
Mm,
we had the new massive Neo Panamax container cranes delivered. So that was earlier in September. I missed that
right.
one.
And
But
then they didn't go live until what, that January? Because I remember just like waiting. And we should do a thing on that, right? Because they
mhm.
come in and they're gosh, I wish I could. Where's a pen? I would draw it up real quick if I had a pen. Anyway, so there's a base, and then the tall part of the crane gets put on top of the base. And so when they come in, the bases are off to the side. The tall part is down on the ship, and then the crane that's all the way up at the top is lowered, right? So I don't know if this was the ship, and then so the crane is kind of, and it's making it so it just barely gets under the bridge.
Yep.
But what people don't realize is that you have to take basically those three major pieces, get them off of a ship. So just think about that for a moment, about balancing and how the heck do you roll this thing off of this steel thing onto this cement thing and
Do you know how they do it?
not mess it up.
Yeah, they have temporary rail lines that they put connecting the bridge to the dock.
And shout out, raise your hand if you ever heard Mike say this before. And how does that happen? Right?
That that
So
that's where our homework is going to be. I've never seen it before, but I know that that's how they do it.
right. And then once you get everything there, then they have to assemble the crane.
hmm So
And
that's why it takes 6 months after they deliver.
right. So now you've got these giant cranes. All right. So what assembles the giant cranes? How a ham sandwich does that happen?
hmm
And so yeah, it took months for them to, and they did testing, and So I remember following that, like, oh my goodness, when's the first ship that's going to go in and use the new cranes, and
Sure.
being pretty excited about that.
So those are the two history dates. The only other thing I want to mention is that this week, Vane Brothers had their you're going to go get it for us, had
Yep.
our printed an article on us in our podcast.
What?
Yes,
Little old you and me?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, no, I mean we knew about this.
Yeah, of course we do.
So Blaze over at Vane Brothers invited us over. Yep, there's the Pipeline magazine. This is their internal magazine publication. It's actually publicly available. If you go to Vane Brothers website and go
Mm-hmm.
to, I think, newsletter or publication, and it's listed here. And you can learn about everything that they're doing within their company and all the good work and all their good employees. And
Mm-hmm.
they dedicated almost a 2-page spread to us.
Yeah.
What we're trying to accomplish here is just spread the good word of what's happening within the Port of Baltimore. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate the effort that Vane Brothers did in support of us and trying to
So
get
that was nice that they had us in to talk about what we are doing here. So I gotta be honest, anytime that Helen Bentley and you and I are mentioned in the same sentence, I feel like I am nowhere near close to being available to be worthy to be put in that same sentence. Anyway,
I agree 100%.
but yeah, she had this really cool show, and she went out and talked to people, and she educated people about the port. Now she did it in a different way.
Correct.
And we're doing it in the new way, the way people do it these days. But so channeling a port champion, Singer and Snow follow a path blazed by Helen Delick Bentley. I can't. So kind of cool. Ridiculous, maybe that I'm getting emotional, but just like, gosh, I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
I understand that. No, I agree, and I was in doing some of my educational work. I had the opportunity to work in and around her, and I appreciate every bit of time that I was able to get, and interact with her. There is no way that I would ever be able to fill her shoes and the worth and the effort that she put in to champion the Port of Baltimore.
Well, plus there were pumps, so
That's true. Yeah.
Don't want to go there. But one of the things that and we're going to have, we've got all these. Are you writing these down? Because regrettably, I'm not. All these ideas that I have, okay, podcast 48. We could do a whole podcast on Helen, an hour, and we might be 1%. I mean, of telling her story.
Right.
The thing that blows me away, and I can't get over this point, is that when you talk about Helen, and it's real easy, you Google Helen Bentley. Where was she from? It's very small, dusty town in the middle. And I mean, when I say if you pulled up, Google it, right? Then type it into Google Maps, then zoom in. I mean, there's not a lot there. There's not a lot around there. And so how this lady comes from, and really, a small, dusty town, unless it used to be a big town, a small, dusty town in the middle of Nevada, and develops this passion for port and ships. I just find wanting to know that path, that just fascinates me.
It is extremely fascinating.
It's not like has a maritime history in her family like you do, right? And so how does that develop? How did that happen? Just fascinates me. We're gonna have to do.
It is fascinating.
We're gonna have to do a whole podcast on Helen one day.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
That's all I've got for today.
Okay. So I'm gonna try to add some. Okay. So I was at, well, a couple things.
Okay.
When I went to do that sailing cruise on the Woodwind, uh, History Cruise Monday, and they invited me to come and talk about history of shipping in the Chesapeake Bay. And a lot of times it morphs into people asking about the ships, and
Mm.
when we get out there, you can see the ships at anchorage, and it develops into some nice conversations. And most of my knowledge is current, um, you know, current shipping. But while I was at Ocean City, having the celebration of life for my brother-in-law, another family member, my wife's cousin, has a place that's kind of back bay, kind of near the beach, and their family has some maritime history.
Mm.
Her dad, so my wife's cousin's wife, her dad was uh, one of the people who advocated for getting the John Brown to come to Baltimore. And so they've got like a room dedicated to like maritime pictures and ship
Wow.
photographs and drawings. And then they've got this really nice bookshelf in their main living room. And I just start looking. Chesapeake Bay, a pictorial
Oh,
maritime history. And they know that everything that I'm interested in about the port. So they gave it to me.
nice. Oh, okay.
So that is really cool. And then when I was getting ready to do my history cruise talk on the sailing ship out of Annapolis, the Woodwind, and so there's a local guy who writes history books.
Hmm.
Still, he just wrote another one. And he was like, "You need to go get these two books." And so this one by Jane Wilson McWilliams, Annapolis, City on the Severn, History. Look at this thing.
Wow.
And I was able. So he gave me two books to get. He said, "Go get these two books." One was like History of the Port of Baltimore from 1820 to 1863. It was written in like 1950. I was able to find these two books on Amazon.
Huh.
Now I haven't had the time to do much but flip through them, but
Sure.
I don't know,
Yeah,
kind of
definitely.
cool stuff. So to brush up on my local maritime history. So, as we're coming to the end of this thing, remember if you're on YouTube, give us a like. Please give us a like. Subscribe and hit the bell to be alerted to new podcasts as they come available. So, we're Balto Ches on Twix. Shout out Amy Lawrence, and Instagram and YouTube. We started out as just a Facebook group, and we've morphed into plenty more than that. Of course, we've got this podcast, the website full of port information. We even sell swag. You see me drinking my coffee with this cup. It has both logos on it. This one, which is our trademark logo, and this one, which I had commissioned before the bridge went down. And the guy did a great job. We've got hats, coffee cups, t-shirts, and the cool thing about that logo is, bam, you can get this really cool logo on the back of a t-shirt, and the link is on the website. I think it's called Swag. There's a tab called Swag, and you can just go and order the stuff. It comes right to your house.
Do you have stickers left? I saw you had some stickers that you were hawking at the BPA meeting.
I do have stickers left. I'm going to take them to my going to a crab feast here in about a half hour or so, and I'm going to see if anybody else wants some. Yeah, I'm
Sounds
basically
good.
just folks have been really nice, and they've been sending small donations to cover, which is really cool. And then this one lady was like, "Hey, thanks for the stickers. Here's 5 more envelopes. Send these to all of my family." Right? So
Cool.
I am really proud of this design. I came up with it myself. One day I will have to show you the crude, horrible drawing that I did that started.
Got to start somewhere.
Oh, it was bad. You know, it was just like some horrible, you know, art clips. You know, find like a container ship, find that key bridge sign that we use that you see on
Mm-hmm.
the Beltway, and
Yep.
just kind of move it over, and then put a word of. Oh, it was bad. Anyway, and you know, several iterations, and the guy worked really hard. Anyway, so.
If you want to listen to the audio versions of this, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And you had mentioned some other
Other platforms,
venues, for lack
yeah,
of a better term.
I'm working on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Send me a message or something. I'd like to know what those are. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to go figure them out. I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember what.
They're back bay as
Yeah, yeah. Well,
they're not.
I'll figure it out and then work it into the script.
Yeah, that's kind of like what happens every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got this idea, and then if I don't write it down, then it's gone, and then I gotta go find it. Like we talked about, like I talked about that those diagrams in a document about how they planned the entire demolition of every piece, and there's a diagram of everything, and I found it, and I'm pretty sure I bookmarked it. Now, where is it?
Yeah. Oh, so
And
you
you'll
do
find
like I do. I put it in a special place to remember it, and I forget where the special place is at.
Yeah,
It's
that's why
fine.
we get along. Good
All
stuff,
right.
man.
Is that it for today?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, let's count it down. You ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Happy
Happy
ship
ship
watching.
watching. All right. Hope you all have a great week.
You too. Everybody have a good week.
All right. Bye.